Hi everyone and welcome to a new video. This one is around in case you want to move outside the country. That means if you want to go into one of 5 countries, the US, UK, Australia, Japan and Dubai, what are the standard paths to go there? This comes from experience of me personally working in the US and in Japan. I also have a Dubai visa and a bunch of our students who have moved to Japan, Australia and to the US. I have a different path. Some students have a different path. So I'll talk through. So recently we had our first international placement, by which I mean one of our students that we referred from India to a remote company in the US got their O1 approved and they'll be moving to the US next month. This video we'll talk through in case you are a curious software developer, either currently working in the industry or eventually aiming to get into the industry. This comes from very practical on-ground experience of me having a Japanese visa, a Dubai visa and a US visa, and a bunch of students who have work visas in the US, Japan, Australia and UK. I'll talk through how can you directly get a job and move to these countries, or also the other path is that you don't directly get a job, you go for a master's or you find a different route and reach these companies eventually for a tech job. Without any further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, we'll kick things off with my journey. As I said, I have 3 visas right now, a B1, B2 in the US, a highly skilled visa for Japan, and an Emiratis ID for Dubai. I'll talk through how I got all 3 of these. B1, B2 was the simplest one for me, and it's actually a great visa if you want to passively work in the US. By passively work in the US, I mean you want to go there for less than 6 months in a year, and mostly for business purposes, which is what I went there for as well. So you can't officially ever be employed in a job in a company in the US. You can work as a contractor though, which is honestly how most people in India are working remotely in the US in a company. If you join any company for those fancy 100k, 200k offers, at least on paper, you're a contractor. That means you're not officially employed. They can fire you whenever they want. You don't have labor laws apply to you. But the good thing there is you're officially a business and hence you can get a B1, B2 visa. Move to the US, stay there for a few months, come back. That's what most students of ours are getting. Akash, who got a placement in Super 30 this year, got a 40 lakh offer from India, is now going to the US, is currently applying for his B1, B2 for a company off-site, but his boss basically told him come for as long as you can. So he was aiming for 6 months, but I told it to, trim it down a little bit, because if you stay there for 6 months continuously on a B1, B2 visa, they'll probably ask you questions the next time you come. So whenever I go, I tend to stay for less than a month and I make sure I keep gaps in the middle so that I don't face immigration issues eventually. Dipen, who's another student of ours, is also working in a company, and his whole crew of, Indian software developers, there are 3 of them, are also again going to the US, mostly for an offsite. But again, once you go there for an offsite, you also work from their office, and legally you're not doing anything wrong because you're still a contractor. You're there for business purposes and, gelling with the team, interacting with the team, creating future plans, presentations, so on and so forth. How do you get a B1, B2 visa is, the next question, which is a little hard. I don't know the exact selection ratio, but I would assume it's really bad, because now that a lot of people and students are applying, they're telling me that line mein aage jitne bhi log the, almost everyone got rejected, and then they were the one who got the visa. The reason being, this is a overly exploited visa by Indians, and of course the immigration officer needs to ensure that they don't let random people in that are going to just stay in the country. If you are working in tech though, if you have a decent payroll, if you can show you have your family over here, houses over here, it becomes a smoother ride. I got my B1, B2 back in 2018. I was a little lucky that Goldman was sending 100 people to the immigration office to get their B1, B2 approved. So almost everyone was getting approved one after the other, because the immigration lawyers knew these are Goldman people, and they hear the story of the first person, the second person, and then everyone else just gets through. Only one person got rejected, then he reapplied and he got in as well. So B1, B2, the simplest path to go to the US if you want to go there passively and for business. And when I say business, I don't really mean you have to set up a business. Even if you're a remote software developer working at a job, conventional job, still you can move to the US. That's the one that I've been using as well. To apply for it, there's a huge line. But, there are startups and actually bots that are running, that are capturing these slots, and then you can buy them in black basically. You have to shed around 50k for a slot. You have to pay another $160 for a DS-150 form, and then you're good to go. You get an interview slot, you go over there, try to be as casual as possible. Make sure you have your payroll. If you have a decent bank balance, you're good. And, by the end, you get approved or rejected. If you get rejected, the general advice is to just fuck off from the counter. Do not stay there. Do not ask follow-up questions. Take your passport and leave. If you do get accepted, then they keep your passport. You get back the passport in a month with your visa stamped on it. So this is how, you'll have to blur a few things here, Hanzala. That's how a US visa looks like. As you can see, I got my immigration plan from Chennai because I was working at Goldman Sachs back then. Cool. It's a highly underrated visa in the sense if you don't permanently want to move to the US, if you don't want a citizenship and you want easy in and out, it's the best visa you can get and honestly not very hard to get. You have to shed 50K, then you get the passport, and then whenever you want to go to the US to just, absorb energy or network, you can go there with a 1 lakh to and fro flight, and staying there is probably, another 1 to 2 lakhs based on where you're staying, if you're sharing your room with a roommate or not. So this is something I suggest to a lot of people, especially people early in their career. If you already have a remote job, it'll be a little harder if you have an on-site job, but if you have a remote job, then it's, you're anyways working from anywhere, might as well work from Silicon Valley, where, you can network with a lot of folks and very passively get, another job, a better job, or if you want to start up, you can absorb a lot of energy from there. So if you have the money and, if you can spend 3-4 lakhs for a month, including the visa process, just go to the US, stay there for a month and come back. You learn a lot. And the ROI on that 3 to 4 lakh investment is really high. That's the passive involvement that I have with the US and, how often I go over there. That was B1, B2. That was the, the simplest visa in the US. Now let's come to two complicated visas. These include H1B and O1s. So O1 is technically an extraordinary human visa. That means you need to be really good at a specific niche to get that visa. The selection criteria is a little weird though. So people do get in through various places and hacks. They have, from last what I heard, they have a 95% selection ratio. So it's easy to get it. And the way you get it is either you get a job in a company in the US and they sponsor your O1 and not an H1B. The reason they sponsor an O1 or even can think of sponsoring an O1 compared to an H1B, because they can prove that you're an extraordinary human being. What does that mean? On paper, that means you've either raised a lot of money for your own company, let's say, in the past, or you have written a lot of research papers, or you've done, some sort of pedigree back in India, or you've won some awards, or if you have been a judge in a hackathon or an event. These things help. Surprisingly, a lot of these are not very difficult to get. Like you can be a judge in a random event, right? But again, I know people who've done not even a BTech, they've done a BCA or a BSc or even a BA and just moved to the US and got an O1. If a company is sponsoring you, this will be a little tricky. Also, they don't really go through gimmicks, but again, the profile is uplifted a little bit by changing the profile a little bit, showing they were, judge at an event, or you have newspaper clippings that you can, put out. You can buy media basically and, put out your image in a newspaper online or offline and show that you're an extraordinary human being. So I'd say there's a way to get in. Like you can pretty much say a lot of really smart people go down the H1B route and a lot of not so smart people can actually make their way in through an O1. It's not too expensive either. It's $20K US if I'm not wrong. And most probably the company that's hiring you is going to sponsor it. That basically means if you do get a job in a US based company, that's probably paying you, I don't know, some 30-40 LPA in India. And if the company is open to you relocating to the US, number one, they'll have to increase your package for sure. Like 30-40K or 30-40 lakhs, not enough to stay in most parts of the US. But number two, if they're going to increase your salary so much, they'll be fine paying $20K US. The question really is, can you get in from there? And the answer is, if you apply, honestly, the probability of getting in is fairly high. That's path number one. That's what a lot of our students who get a remote job take. Usually there are two paths. Either they go there for an offsite, having fun, working there for a few months. That's the B1, B2 route. Or they completely get sponsored on an O1, where it's expected for you to stay in the US for a longer time. You can't really come back to India. You don't have that freedom. You are expected to, stay in the US and build the company from there. There's also an easy path to citizenship if you do get an O1. There is another way to get an O1 that I'm going to talk through next, which is you start your own company. That's actually the cheapest path. You can start a company in the US by spending 5-10K using Stripe, Atlas or something like that. Basically anyone can start a US based company. Then you sort of employ yourself in the US based company. Hopefully you raise funds and get some good referrals from the people that you've raised funds from, and then you get an O1. That's the other way to get an O1. Again, only valid if you want to move to the US permanently. These are the two decent ways to get an O1. Honestly, it's not that hard to get one. If you do plan to stay in the US, want a citizenship, it might be a better path compared to an H1B. And even though on paper it might feel tricky because, H1B is for the normies and whatever. O1 is for the extraordinary people. So you have to tell, through a paper proposal who's better or not. So a lot of 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds, 22 years old get in. There is this guy called Sigil on Twitter, who I think has a company that helps people move to the US on an O1. I think he's himself an O1 grantee as well. You can check him out. He'll probably be linked in the description. I think he runs a company that helps people move to the US. I'm personally not the best guy to guide on this. I never got an O1, probably won't either. But if you do want to get one, you'll have to just find the right lawyers, pay them the right amount, which is, 20-25K. It's a much easier path to go there compared to, going the donkey route or going for a master's. It's cheaper that way. You immediately get a job, so on and so forth. So that's B1, B2 and O1 to move to the US. So let's come to the third point, which is H1B to move to the US. This is probably the worst visa to go to the US. The reason is, one, it's hard to get. And two, it only is valid for 3 years and you can only renew it twice. Hence, if you stay there for more than 6 years and you are not able to apply for a citizenship or a green card, more technically, then you sort of have to move away from the US. That has happened with one of my seniors who I recently met when I was in New York. She told me she got rejected thrice. She went for a master's and then applied for an H1B, and she did not get one for 3 years consecutively. So she either has to come back to India or she has to go for another degree, which is what she's planning to do now. She's already done her master's, so she'll now go for a PhD, and then she'll actually, stay there for a few more years, then get another extension and, apply for an H1B again. You can apply for an H1B from anywhere. You can apply for it from India. It's not too expensive either, but there is a lottery thing, which basically means anyone can apply, and only, I forget the number, but I think only 130k people or 130,000 people get in. Amongst them, 50,000 seats are sort of reserved for masters people and 80,000 are for anyone, including masters. So masters people can apply in both the lotteries, but someone who's not done his master's, has only done a bachelor's, has to compete with the 80,000 pool. That's why it's a little hard to get one if you've not done a master's from the US. So here there are two paths again to apply for an H1B. The easier one, honestly the most predictable one and the risk averse one, is to just go for a master's. It's not too difficult to get a master's. There are many universities that exist in the US. A lot of them have cash cow courses. So as long as you can anywhere between 30 to 50k or maybe slightly more, 30 to 70k US dollars a year, that's around 25 to 60 lakhs a year, then you're sorted. Honestly, you can move there for a master's. That gives you 2 years of master's visa. It also gives you an OPT after that. So you can stay there for another 2 years and apply for an H1B during those 2 years. If you get an H1B, then you again stay there for 3 more years. Do all of this knowing the fact that the job market is tricky for master's people right now, and it's a bloodbath amongst H1B people, because if you get let go during your H1B period, then you have to move back to India if you don't find another job in 2 months. So jinki H1B hai already wahan, if they're getting let go, then they're again competing with the same talent pool and a lot of times pricing themselves down so that they can just retain a job and stay in the US. Hence, it is generally a bloodbath. It is not as bad in computer science. It's really bad in masters for, an MBA or something like that, or any other field. So pick and choose if you want to take this path. I have a friend who does this for people, he helps people immigrate to the US who I think have a lot of money, or, just want to move there for, there's nothing bad in moving there by spending a lot of money. You get a visa, you stay there for a few years, you can probably get a citizenship as well. It's actually the most risk averse path to reach there. It's not the best path to make, money, by which I mean, you can probably make more money working from India or starting a business. That's actually the less money path, or, the more scary path when it comes to making money. But it's the easiest path if you want to move to the US and you already have money. So if you already have money, all you have to do is, apply for a master's, go over there, get an H1B after your OPT, and then, stay there for hopefully 6 years, apply for a green card, and then you're good to go. Once you apply for a green card, you can come in and out, as long as you want. But if you don't apply for a green card, or if your H1B gets rejected, then you're screwed. Then you have to come back to India. A lot of times you move to Canada. A lot of times you, do another master's degree. Cool. So this is probably for the rich kids, unless you're getting an Ivy League, in which case also it's a little tricky these days. It's not very easy to get a job. I would, amongst these three, suggest, honestly, if you don't want to move to the US, then a B1, B2. Great visa to have, come in and out, absorb the good things, leave the bad things over there, and, get a remote job, make equivalent amount of money or start up from India, but have the freedom to come in and out from the US. Number two, I would suggest an O1. If you do want to move to the US, if you want to command US salaries from the US, then yes, O1 is actually a great path, and probably the easiest path to a citizenship as well. On number three is H1B. There are more visas like L1, but I'm just going to stop myself here. Amongst these three, pick and choose. If you do want to go for a master's though, a lot of this context came from a friend who, helps people apply for a master's. There is a doc linked in the description for their company. So if you want to go for a master's in the US, UK, Japan, then you can fill the form. They'll reach out to you and, they'll help you out in case you want a college. If you want a, not the best college, just want to move there and you'll figure things out yourself, then he's a pretty good person to guide you through it. The link is in the description. That covers US. It took a long time. Let's move to Japan next. One of our students, Nandini, is currently working in Japan. First question is, if let's say someone very normal wants to move to Japan, what are the paths, if you know all of them, including going for a master's or applying for a job or learning Japanese, passing an examination, then applying for a job?
Want to go for masters, then there are scholarships. People usually go for a mixed scholarship because you get monthly stipend, and that's the most popular one. That's the one that the Japanese government pushes the most. So you can try for mixed scholarship, and there are a lot of other scholarships. Every university has their own programs too, but mixed scholarship is like a common one that people apply for, and then they can just apply for any university they want to study in using that scholarship. That is one way. I don't know the type of visa that you get with that scholarship.
So this is like master's apply bhi to karna padega. What people like, is it easy to get in? Is it hard to get in? What is the tuition fee? irrespective of if you're getting a scholarship. Application process, बहुत लोग आते हैं इंडिया से. Do you have friends who are doing masters from there?
I have one who I talked to in that YouTube video that I'm talking about. Okay, if you want to go try for a job, I mean, if you want a visa for a job, then you either apply directly and the company will create that visa for you. And the visa is called the infamous engineer visa, engineer humanities and specialist visa, something like that. And that visa is connected to your company. Basically, if they are not being your guarantor for that visa, then you cannot be in this country. And if you want to be independent, not attached to your company and still be working in Japan, then you need to apply for highly skilled visa by yourself by going to the immigration office on your own. मुझे इतना ही पता है.
Correct. When you say it's tight for your visa, that means you can't really leave your job.
Yes, you cannot switch. You can switch jobs, but then the other company will have to redo your whole visa again.
Got it. So you think the challenging bit is getting a job. Getting a visa is not that difficult. मतलब तुम्हारा लग गया तो किसी का भी लग जाएगा ना.
Yeah.
Okay. And I personally have a high-skilled visa in Japan. I don't know if it's valid anymore. Honestly, I left Japan like a year ago. But she's on an engineer visa. I was on a high-skilled visa. There's a subtle difference between them. I can talk through what that is. But these are the two ways you can move to Japan. Both of them are tricky. I remember my Japan process was crazy. I got rejected once. And then the second time we applied again, I had to show that I was the CPO of a company in India before joining this company. I had an IIT tag that gave me 2 points. If I learned Japanese and passed an examination, I think it's called the N2 examination, then I would have gotten another 2 points. But thankfully, the company that was hiring me, the CEO there was a lawyer, and he had good contacts in Japan. I did not have to go through a lot of process. They got me approved the second time. It's the better visa, of course, as the name suggests. You command a higher salary. It has a basic minimum salary expectation, which I think is around 30-35 lakhs a year. And that was, the Japanese salary that they eventually got me at base one. The rest of my salary came in US dollars. If you can get one, go through the process, learn Japanese for sure. If you're sure that you want to move to Japan, which I know is a fascination a lot of young people do, my sister does, a lot of my friends do, कि भाई Japan ही जाके रहना है, then actually high skill visa is great. If you have a pedigree already, which means you went to an IIT, beautiful. If you did not, then again, learn Japanese. That's the best way to get through the high skilled visa. But the engineer visa that Nandini went on, also not bad. And she told me she's now trying to change her status to a high skilled visa because probably she wants to go for a citizenship or something else. So there is a path to convert your visa to a high skill visa once you go there as well. I think the first point is to get into the door. And one thing that I learned from her as well is, other than you getting points because you've learned Japanese, the bigger thing that matters is your technical skills, because there's actually lack of technical skills in Japan. I saw this when I was there. I was in a fairly American company, but as I met my Japanese peers, this is not true for China, this is true for Japan. There is lack of technical talent there. And hence, even if you're, a moderate engineer over here, you're not valued. They're asking you, DSA questions that are really hard and, you can't get through it. And the company that's giving 5 LP offers is asking really hard questions. The complete opposite happens over there. They ask you the simplest questions. And it's easier to get into a company in Japan compared to India. That said, the salaries aren't, super high compared to India. You'd expect a similar, 30 LP offer, 40 LP offer to kick things off. And even though Nandini's rent, as she mentioned in the video, was 50,000 rupees a month, I don't know how she got it in Tokyo, because mine, I remember, was $3,000 a month for a 2 BHK. Hers is a studio, I would assume. But, I wouldn't necessarily say that's the norm. I think my rent was the norm, and you'll at least have to pay, $1,000 a month, which basically means, 1/4 of your salary in rent. Everything else is manageable. The taxes are not too bad. But again, you need to know it's not super luxurious when it comes to making money. Also, you're getting paid in yen, which depreciates really fast compared to every currency out there. But it's a beautiful lifestyle. If you are sure for a fact you want to move to Japan, if you also, like Japanese, the culture, which honestly was very opposite of Punjabi culture, so it was a little hard for me. But if you feel like you like that, which as I said, even my sister is Punjabi, she loves it, then hands down, you should go there. Never seen better or more polite people out in the world. Never seen a cleaner city or a more high-tech city as well. Well, there are better cities. But at least Tokyo, it's pretty close to a New York or a Dubai when it comes to all the facilities that there. So there's highly skilled visa. There is engineer visa. Nandini told me you shouldn't learn Japanese, but I would suggest you do, because once you move there, things get easier. This is one of the reasons we're getting a Japanese teacher in our school as well. So that's a few people take the Japanese elective, and and the path to move to Japan, even for an exchange semester or, for a placement, becomes easier because we do have a few companies that we know in Japan. On to the third country, we're going to talk about Dubai next. All right, two ways to move to Dubai. You start your own business, and if you get a business set up, I think for 3 years, you pay around 11 to 12 lakh rupees, and you get 1 or 2 visas. So you can get one for yourself and your family, like your mother, your sister, your brother, your father. And if you have it for 5 years, I think you can get more. But long story short, you have to pay. Another YouTuber, has moved his business to Dubai. So this is the route that he took. And I don't remember the exact numbers, but I do remember, he spent around this somewhere in the 12 to 20 lakh rupees range to set up a company over there and, get the visas, medical, so on and so forth, and move. For me, I got, again, a visa as an employee. And for me, it was actually the worst. I actually got a visa as a clerk because I just had to move there, and it didn't really matter what roles sort of I was doing. I just had to get a visa as quickly as possible because the company was moving their headquarters there and I had to work from there. Hence, the visa that I got was actually a clerk visa, which basically involved, if I remember correctly, moving. I went to Dubai. I entered Dubai. And when I entered this time, I did not show my passport because I get direct entry to Dubai because of my US visa. But this time I showed them a different letter, and then they stamped that letter I got in. Then I went for a medical test where they probably tested if I have a very bad disease or not. And then I went to a weird looking immigration office somewhere in old Dubai, where the process was fairly simple. Honestly, you could tell I was not a clerk because everyone else you could tell were a clerk or labor or whatever. You could tell that I was a little different in the room. And then I was allowed to skip the line as well, and just got through and got my Emiratis ID. That's it. I don't know if this is the path that you want to take. I don't know if how good or bad it is. And again, I've probably revoked that ID now. I've never used it after I've never gone to Dubai since. If I do go to Dubai, I don't work at that company anymore. So I don't know if that specific visa is valid for me. So if you do have money to shed, then probably you should open a company. If you don't have money to shed, then you'll have to find a company in Dubai, and they'll take up the process from there. It's pretty easy. I think mine was somewhere in the range of 5 to 10K US dollars that they had to spend for me to get the Emiratis ID. Once you have that, you can get a SIM card, whatever, stay there, get a rental, so on and so forth. That's Dubai. Fairly sad city if you stay there. It's a little, very empty, but it's also very India-like, by which I mean, there are a lot of Hindi. I recently got to know a stat that 70% of the population of Dubai is Desi people. That includes people from India, Bangladesh, and other, neighboring countries. And hence there's a very big Indian food culture and everyone speaking Hindi around you. So it just feels like you're in India. That's one good thing. Honestly, there are no bad things other than the weather. It gets really hot from time to time, and it also feels very doomsday-ish because it's a little empty when it comes to the streets and the buildings and the surroundings. Tech scene wise is pretty good. Salary wise probably won't be too high compared to Bangalore or Delhi. You can probably get similar salaries. Maybe not at a senior level. You can definitely get better salaries in India. At a fresher level, Dubai might be better. So pick and choose. With that, we'll move to UK. Now, these are sort of picked together because I'm going to suggest the master's route for going here. Even though you can actually get a job and move to UK, a lot of my friends did move to Meta UK or London, I think. And then, some of them work at 𝗟𝗶H again in London. I am not aware of their visa process, unfortunately. So not the best guy to guide on the employment route. I can talk through the master's route. Again, super valid if you have money and you have money to shed. If you want to move to Australia, a very big Punjabi obsession. I don't know how many of you have it. I do not recommend this at all, especially if your goal is to make wealth eventually. I guess if you're a super average human being and you know that for a fact, if you're not very high IQ, then it's not the worst route. Because when it comes to, median salaries or, menial jobs, you'll probably get paid more over there. And it's definitely a better lifestyle. That's, another benefit that you get. If you know for a fact you're not extraordinary, you know for a fact you're not ordinary either. You're below average when it comes to, your IQ. You can tell you won't make ever, 1 lakh a month in India, then it actually makes sense to go down the master's route because again, there are a lot of cash cow universities in Australia and in UK. They'll just get you in. A lot of times they give out very heavy scholarships. This is a very big market. And hence, going there, if you go to UK, I think you get a 2-year visa after you graduate from your college. And they also have, amongst the 2 years in college, 1 year is a placement year and the other year is a normal year. So basically you can work for 3 years and then hopefully you get a visa. A company, actually hires you and sponsor your employment visa. But even if you don't get an employment visa for 4 years, basically, you can stay there for 4 years. Australia, the number is again, I think 2 years after you graduate from college, you can stay there. Again, I could be wrong. Correct me in the comments if that's the case. But I think from what I know, my friend who sort of helps people in immigration told me this, in Australia, you can stay there for 2 years after you graduate, even if you don't get a job. And if you get a job, again, you get a proper work visa. But in some low population cities, this number is higher. So you can actually stay there for 4 years after you graduate because there's low population, so they allow you to stay for more. Australia and UK are are again hotspots for Indians to go. I'm sure there's a way to go there directly after you get a job, but the routes that I'm talking about is going for a master's. Honestly, not learning too much, just trying to finish your examinations, getting decent grades. Probably not hoping for a campus placement, even though it's much easier in tech compared to, if you go for an MBA or something else, a master's in arts. I don't know. In tech, it's easier. You'll find all the MBA people saying, yeah, tech with a naukri hai, finance with a naukri hai, and that's true. But it's not super significant. But you will have to work hard to finally get a job. So pick and choose if you want to actually, go to one of these two countries. If you know for a fact you're below average, then probably not the worst investment to do. You have to spend anywhere between $20,000 US dollars a year up to $60,000 US dollars a year, based on the university you're taking, based on the scholarship you're getting. Plus, you will have to take care of your accommodation, food. So, add that up to around $100,000 for 2 years. If you can spend that much, you get 4 years in that country, and that 4 years is your time to, build your future out there, which basically means get a job. If you are willing to take that risk, I don't know if you should or not. I personally wouldn't. If you're willing to take that risk, then it's probably a great path to take. If for a fact, in India, you're not going to get a job, or if you're not going to get a great job. Again, my friend helps with these immigration things to these universities. If you want to take the immigration route through a university, I've linked their form in the description. You can talk to them and figure out if you want to go for a master's. That's all I had for this video. As I said, I have personally only stayed in 3 of these 5 countries. I have friends in others. My personal suggestion, if you do have fascination for, going to a different country, get a B1, B2 for the US, maybe get an Emiratis ID, but it's expensive again. Maybe get a B1, B2 for the US and, easy in and out from the US. If you have a lot of money, get a passport from a different country. I think $150,000 or $350,000, one of these 2 numbers is what you have to spend to get a passport from some island country that lets you in some 150 countries or anything. If you actually want a job, then the more risk-averse path is to go for a master's. There's a very clear job or, immigration visa by the end. The more chaotic, slightly risky path, which, if I've placed 100 people, maybe 2 people have gotten that, is getting an O1 and moving to the US on it. If you just want free migration in and out from the US, B1, B2 is the best, is the one I'm going to suggest to a lot of students that are coming to 100x school, so that when you're free in our summer vacation, you should probably just go to Silicon Valley, to SF, and, stay there for a month and see how things are happening over there. I don't know if it'll be easy or hard to get. I don't know if people will be able to afford it. But if I had the money and if I wasn't back in school right now, I would spend a summer or 2 in the US, fully on an O1, less probabilistically on an internship visa. But at the very least, I would go there on a B1, B2 and spend my summer over there and talk to companies, even if I don't work there, and, figure out the rest of my year while I was in college. With that, we'll end it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye. सीना बहुत आ रहा भी दे, एसी चलाना पड़ेगा, पीछे आएगी ठाठा ठाठा आवाज। चल जा भाई। एसी पता है कितने का आता है हमजारा भाई? नहीं। ₹4 का, सबसे सस्ता लो तो। एसी पता है कितने लग रहे हैं हमजारा भाई? नहीं। मैथ करो तुम अब। सैलरी कम करनी पड़ेगी भाई तुम्हारी, एसी बहुत महंगे हैं।
बाबू भाई ऐसे डायरेक्ट बाबू